All right, we are back with the GSMC Wrestling Laureate podcast brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host, Eric Rodriguez, here every Monday through Friday, 8 p.m. Pacific Time, 11 p.m. Eastern Time, here on the GSMC Sports Network to talk about the greatest thing in the world, professional wrestling. We talk about all the action inside and outside of the ring, backstage, curtain calls, rumors, and drama. We talk about superstar, inactive statuses, injury updates, contract negotiations, extensions, and new signings. We talk about promotions from AEW to WWE, TNA to Ring of Honor. We also talk about Stardom, GCW, the NWA, the CMLL, who makes major news in the world of professional wrestling. We talk about it here on this show, 1010%. So make sure you guys tune into the GSMC Sports Network Monday through Friday, 8 p.m. Pacific Time, 11 p.m. Eastern Time. All right, so without further ado, let's talk about some NXT Halloween Havoc. So it should be pretty badass. I am super excited to watch this. Although I do go to work tomorrow and it sucks. They are live at the Giant Center in Hershey, Pennsylvania, and it's pretty awesome match card. It seems like there's only 5 matches. Wow. All right, I could be I couldn't could be looking up the wrong website. But yeah, let's go and dig on into it. I think this will be the first match, to kind of kick things off here. I think we're going to see the Women's North American Championship, Kaylani Jordan defending against one of the members of Fatal Influences. Obviously, last episode of NXT, they spin the wheel and it was Spinner's Choice. Bam, what was it? Aria? I think it was Aria. Oh, damn it! I mispronounced her name. But she recently made her debut in NXT. A lot of people did not see it because of the booking of CW. Obviously, there's a lot more stricter guidelines. I feel like it was the 10 o'clock news, popped up, and a lot of fans didn't see her make her debut. Maybe she finds a way to kind of involve herself and try to get a title shot for Kaylani Jordan's Women's North American Championship, which would make the most sense. Which would make the most sense why she would, come out during this time because people gunning after the NXT World Women's Champion Roxanne Perez. You have Julia, you have Stephanie Vaquer. So I feel like that slot is kind of close. You have 2 matches, obviously, with one with Vaquer and one with one with. She did have one with Julia, but it was ultimately because of Cora Jade. It wasn't really to the expectation of a lot of wrestling fans. But I don't know. It's a possibility that they can run it back. They can run it back, especially heading toward WrestleMania season. Where it's the most unpredictable time of the season, especially in terms of NXT. A member of Fatal Influences basically was determined to take a shot at Kaylani Jordan's Women's North American Championship. Um, I think it has to be at this point JC Jane. It has to be JC Jane. I love Jasmine Nix. I feel like she's one of the younger. She's probably I feel like isn't she the youngest of Fatal Influence? I'm not too sure. Don't quote me on that. Fallon Henley as well. But I feel like the leader has been JC Jane. So the only thing that makes sense, but then you saw JC and you saw Fallon Henley fighting Stephanie Vaquer and Julia on last Tuesday's episode of NXT. So possibly this could Jasmine Nix. I'm not saying that any matches that she would have would be dog crap or anything like that, but she doesn't really give off that main event vibe. You know what I mean? But then again, it is a mid card belt. Kaylani Jordan, babyface. Roxanne Perez, a heel. The Dawn of NXT babyface. In terms of title holders, Nathan Frazier and Axiom babyface. I wouldn't mind another heel. I wouldn't mind another heel champion. But if you put a championship belt within the structure of the Fatal Influences, I feel like it would just kind of, one of them would want to, attack the other, kind of like, like a Triple H, Batista, Randy Orton kind of evolution kind of feel. Obviously, that's where I feel like. Obviously, it's a huge comparison. I'm not doubting the athletic capabilities or the future of these women because I feel like NXT Women's Division is definitely one of the, if not the best in professional wrestling. So all in all, who do I choose? It's probably going to be JC Jane. It has to be JC Jane. If they're looking for someone to take a bump, if they're looking for a spot for someone to be like, okay, Kaylani Jordan, spinner's choice, JC Jane, probably do something with anything goes, absolutely anything goes, where she incorporate where we handicap match. What if that happens? Like, what if she's like, you know what, spinner's choice, let's do a handicap match. Or they do, maybe she's like, hey, screw it, we'll do a fatal four-way match where us and you take on the fatal influence and Kaylani Jordan's kind of like the odd man out there. But then during the match, you have each woman, kind of backstab each other a little bit, and then, Kaylani Jordan is able to pick up the victory to retain the championship, leaving Fatal Influence to be like, how would you do that? Just like, you know what I mean? I don't know. I just feel like spinner's choice. Like I said, we don't know what the match is going to be. But I don't know. It's crazy. It's super crazy. Okay, next we have an ambulance match between Ridge Holland and Andre Chase of Chase U. This rivalry, I feel like at this point, I feel like it needs to end. Well, how they're going to have this happen, there's a couple of possibilities. A lot of people have been speculating throughout the wrestling news media. I read a couple articles saying that maybe you're going to see somebody from Chase U come to WWE Monday Night Raw during the Netflix debut on that show, which is going to be blockbuster. It's been told that that show's going to be PLE event worthy caliber. Ticket sales. It's going to be a lot of big spots, a lot of big bookings. Obviously, the first episode on Netflix is going to basically dictate the future of Monday Night Raw. And that the show has to be huge. It has to be huge. But despite that rumor that one of the Chase U members are going to be leaving, Rich Holland, maybe he gets some help from Pete Dunne. But in an ambulance match, you have to have Chase U kind of make a difference. Not make a difference. That's the wrong wording. Kind of stake their claim as like, hey, like we can kind of be hardcore as well. Maybe you see Duke Hudson come out. Maybe you see Riley Osborne come out as well. And all four of them kind of get their revenge on Ridge Holland and, forcing him to be carried away, within an ambulance. Because at this point, the way Ridge Holland has been running through the roster of Chase U, it just does it. What's the purpose of him winning this match? Like, to be honest, what's the purpose? We already saw Andre Chase get his arse kicked. We already saw him getting carried away in a stretcher and an ambulance. So it's like we already got the other side of that coin. Why do it again? There has to be. I feel like that's the reason why Rich Holland's gonna lose. Like Chase U is gonna rid their Rich Holland problem. And it wouldn't surprise me if you see Ridge come back to WWE. Maybe him and Pete Dunne state their claim in a tag team heading towards SmackDown or Monday Night Raw. Obviously, Pete Dunne is a Raw superstar. But, that's what I would do. Like, if you have Ridge win again, it's just, I don't know. It's just, then again, if it's like, obviously, total conspiracy theory here. This is kind of going way, 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 way off the grid. What if, like, Andre Chase is betrayed by Duke Hudson? Maybe he's kicked out of Chase U and they're like, let's build a Chase U around Ridge Holland. Obviously, that would be completely stupid and pointless, but you have to exercise every possibility. I'm just kidding. No, but I don't think that's a huge possibility. Next, we have Julia. Julia teaming up with Stephanie Vaquer, taking on the NXT Women's Champion Roxanne Perez and Cora Jade. When Cora Jade basically stated that she joined NXT, she came back to NXT, and she was, at the same time kind of showing signs that she wasn't necessarily a fellow or she wasn't necessarily in alliance with Roxanne Perez. The moment she was going to say something like she was cut off. She was cut off. And, maybe this might be kind of hinting at something going forward. Maybe we're going to see a fatal four-way match heading toward NXT's next PLE. Obviously their next, big show's going to be at the 2300 Arena in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, the home of Extreme Championship Wrestling. And that's going to be a big event as well, so it's on a Wednesday, obviously going head to head with AEW Dynamite. But, obviously Julia and Stephanie Vaquer is going to win this match. It's not really any surprise here. I definitely think it's necessary for, keeping their character intact, keeping this, momentum going because Shawn Michaels even, he talked about it, on the Busted Open podcast that the reason why these women's aren't, they're not being pushed as singles wrestlers, necessarily they're taking babyface, they're taking babyface, they're taking baby steps with them because, there's a language barrier, there's communication, and when you're inside the ring, you got to keep your ears open. You're going to be talking to the superstar. You're going to be talking about the spots that you guys discussed pre-show and been, basically, rehearsing throughout the week. And, sometimes there can be, some mishaps. And when it comes to mishaps, it could be bad for the match, could be bad for the storyline, could be bad for wrestlers who might get injured. So obviously, practice makes perfect. Shawn Michaels doesn't want to be, talking on an HBO, late night sports show talking about, oh, you had one of your wrestlers get in. Like, no one wants to hear that. So it's good for Shawn Michaels, the, CEO of NXT, to kind of take these necessary, baby steps. North American Championship, going to keep this one brief. Tony D'Angelo taking on Oba Femi right now, but there's no point. That Oba Femi will lose the championship just to regain it. So Tony D'Angelo is going to pick up the victory. Obviously, he has a whole bunch of built up frustration with Oba Femi for him taking out the family. And then the main event, we have NXT Championship Trick Williams and Ethan Page, and once again in a Devil's Playground match. I love the fact that Ethan Page he broke down the fourth wall, during his promo on NXT, basically telling Trick Williams, and basically the story of wrestling as a whole. WWE superstars, they have the Performance Center, they had NXT, then then they debut to the main roster. And I'm not trying to crap on any, WWE superstar being like, you guys never struggled, you know what I mean? But Ethan Page, like, basically, brought it into fruition. He brought it into the landscape, being like, I went from independent wrestling organizations to independent wrestling organizations. I had blood, sweat, and tears during the independent circuits, when you were in TNA or when you're in AEW or when you're in New Japan Professional Wrestling, like they hit spots like that where, you can have bleeding, and you have to do that to rile up the fans, like I was talking about, on my last episode. Sometimes, these guys wrestle in front of, 500 people, 1,000 people, at most. And then sometimes, if it's big enough, like TNA's getting, you're wrestling in front of, 5,000 people. But WWE, especially in NXT, you're wrestling in front of, you know, obviously if you're at a performance center, it's not that much. But WWE NXT wants to become its own entity. It's going to start selling out arenas. So Ethan Page kind of rubbed it into Trick Williams' face to be like, dude, being brutally honest, dude, I struggled more than you, dude. I'm sorry. You were coddled in WWE. I went out there and made a name for myself outside of a place that, the moment you debut, the moment you win a couple of matches, bam, all of a sudden on Instagram, you get like 20,000, 100,000 likes. Bam, that's it. Trick and, Ethan Page's kind of book, he had to fight for it. And, that's something that I definitely admire for Ethan Page. That's something that that I love about him. When he brought that up, to be honest, I was more or less kind of on the Trick Williams side, but the way Ethan Page approached this promo, I was like, I'm a wrestling fan. He's right. I watch a lot of these wrestlers that do not succeed in WWE and they have to kind of establish themselves elsewhere. Not a lot of people get a shot at the brass ring again. Not a lot of people come back to WWE with flying colors. Like, it just doesn't happen. So, I definitely like the way that Ethan Page brought that up. Trick Williams will probably retain. I feel like he will retain the NXT World Heavyweight Championship, and I feel like Ethan Page will move on, and he's probably. I feel like he'll probably challenge, the Don for the NXT North American Championship along the lines within a couple of months or two, or maybe perhaps you saw him on Monday Night Raw. If he makes his debut on Monday Night Raw, automatically he's in the main event category. I'm sorry, I feel like he is. Or the Intercontinental Championship. Like, it's any show he goes on, he's going to be big. And that's exactly what WWE, NXT, and Shawn Michaels wanted to do when they brought him in from All Elite Wrestling. And I feel like ultimately, it served its purpose. It served its purpose. His, NXT title run, although it was brief, well, not that brief, it was, couple months, a couple months and a half. But it kind of helped Adam Page, Ethan Page, kind of establish himself as a WWE superstar, and kind of helps kind of him trail away from like an AEW bust or anything like that. All right, guys. So we're gonna move on. We're gonna talk about Mercedes Monet's top 5 fantasy matches she recently revealed inside of an interview. So we're gonna talk about that when we return. So hey, do not go anywhere.